Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. I said this a little bit earlier, but I know some folks were just joining in that we are meeting tonight to have an information session and a public hearing for a proposed air permit for Bridging North America. So hopefully that is why you are joining us. My name is Jennifer Dixon, and I do work for EGLE's Environmental Support Division. I'm going to be hosting the meeting tonight. So we have a few things that we want to go through before we get into all the details of the meeting. And I'm going to be introducing my staff here in just a minute. But before we really get rolling on things, I do want to introduce Marianne Dolahanty. She's Air Quality Division's Division Director, and I know she wants to welcome you to the meeting tonight. So Marianne, if you want to go ahead and do that, you can anytime you're ready.
Okay, perfect, Jen. Can you hear me? All right, so thank you, Jen. I appreciate it. And I wanted to take a moment tonight to thank you all for attending this evening and taking the time out of your busy schedules to participate in this public hearing. So my hope is that tonight affords you time to ask us questions about the project that came to EGLE from Bridging North America for consideration of an air permit. We're going to attempt to provide you some insight into our process that it took to take us to this point this evening, including what the company is requesting, and we hope to answer some of your questions before we open up for the official public hearing during tonight's virtual event. So I know that taking time to be with us tonight sort of takes you away from some of the other things you might rather be doing. So again, super appreciate you spending time with us. Public participation and hearing your comments is extremely important to us and a valuable part of our work. Whether you're here to listen or you plan to make a comment, it's really important that you're here and that we hear your voice. So the comments you provide tonight about projects like the one proposed by Bridging North America are very helpful for us to ensure that every aspect of what the company proposes is thoughtfully and thoroughly reviewed. Your comments will definitely be taken into consideration when I make a decision about the proposed permit. And know that we'll be communicating on that decision regarding this final decision once it's made. So at this point, again, thank you for attending, and I will pass it back to Jen so that we can move through the rest of the evening.
Thanks a lot, Marianne. I appreciate it. If I can have the rest of my staff turn your cameras on just for a minute. And it says introduction of air quality staff, and I should have caveated that we actually do have one of our other division partners here with us, so I'll be introducing him in just a minute as well. But I want to get started first with Janelle Trohill. She is the permit engineer that worked on this facility's proposed permit. So you're going to be hearing primarily from her and I tonight. So I don't know, maybe that's good or bad, but Janelle, if you can give a wave there to let folks know who you are. And like I said, she's going to be talking to you guys a little bit later about a little bit more about air quality's process, and then about what was actually going into the permit. I also have Jeff Korniski, and he is the assistant district supervisor in our Detroit district office. So he's going to be representing our field operations, which we'll be talking about inspections and things like that that might come after a permit is issued for any facility in the Detroit area and Wayne County there. I also have Mike Deppa. He is our toxicologist that worked on this permit. So he'll be here to answer some questions as well. I'm going to kind of probably confuse you a little bit, but I'm going to try not to. I have Susan Kilmer, and she is the supervisor for our air monitoring section. So she works with a lot of our stationary monitors. So this is going to be air collection systems that are looking for air emissions out in the outdoor air, in your ambient air, in your breathing zone. And she works with a great group of staff that work with those. And there's a lot in that Detroit area. So she'll be able to answer some questions about that. I also have Jim Haywood on the line, and he works in our air modeling. So monitoring, modeling, a little bit different. So Jim's role is looking at what the company is asking for and then using a computer simulator to say, like, if this permit was approved as the company is asking, what does that mean for community? What does that mean for air emissions surrounding the facility? So he does great work too, as far as that goes. He's a really big help on a lot of these permits that we get asked to write. And then I also have Steve Hoin, and he is actually with our remediation and redevelopment division. So he's been involved in some of the other bridge issues. So we just wanted to have him online to hear maybe some of your questions, get back to you later, or potentially be able to answer some of those tonight. We might not be able to get to everything that everybody has, but we will get to as many as we can. And I would be remiss if I didn't introduce my co-host, Jim Ostrowski, who's also my boss. And he's gonna be helping out tonight, kind of behind the scenes with the question and answer and getting folks unmuted and things like that for our hearing and our Q&A. So if my staff wants to turn their cameras off, except for Janelle, if you wanna leave yours on, I do wanna talk a little bit about how the evening is going to work tonight in just a minute, but I want to run through kind of the order we're going to do things in. So obviously you guys already just got introduced to the staff that are here to speak with you tonight. We're going to start off the evening with an information session. And what we're going to do with that is I'm going to have Janelle and Jeff's going to help her out too in the end, talk a little bit about, like I said, the process that air quality goes through to write these proposed permits for your review. A little bit about what the company asked for, what would be in that proposed permit to try to give you a little bit of an idea of where we are with things. Then we're going to do a question and answer session. So that question and answer session is going to go from whenever Janelle and Jeff get done talking, which I promise won't be very long, until 7 o'clock. Or whenever you guys are done asking questions, whichever comes first. And that's going to be an opportunity for you to, write your questions in the chat. We'll have a little bit of dialogue back and forth. Like I said, staff will be here to try to answer some of your questions. Once 7 o'clock comes, or when you're done asking questions, we'll go right into that public hearing. And just as a reminder, the public hearing is going to be an opportunity for you to provide comments. We're not going to be responding back. So sometimes when people give a comment, they might ask a question, and just want to remind you that during that comment period, we will not be responding back to any questions that you might have. So that's going to happen in the public hearing session. We're going to talk about other ways that you can submit an official comment. So if this is your first time kind of hearing about this proposed permit, don't feel like you're obligated to make a comment tonight. The comment period stays open until March 14th. There are plenty of other ways to be able to provide us comments, especially if you have attachments or things that you want to share with us that are going to need more than just your verbal. You can email those to us. You can send them in the mail to us. We also have a great voicemail box that if you want to sort of articulate your comment a little bit differently, or you want some time to think about it, we'd love for you to give us a call on our voicemail box and leave us a message as well. And I'll go over how to do that at the end because I don't want to talk too much right now. I want to get to Janelle. We'll also talk about ways that you can find other information. So this will be particularly helpful if this is your first time sort of hearing about this proposed permit tonight. And then we'll talk about who to contact with further questions. So I know we have some folks on the phone, so I will definitely be giving out some phone numbers and giving out some email addresses, and I'll try to articulate those slowly enough so you can jot them down if you want to. But we will be sharing the slides, etc., at a later date. So just to let you know, reminder, your lines are going to be muted during the meeting unless you've raised your hand to speak or you're going to be making comment. And we are going to be recording the meeting. So we'll record and post all of the public meetings on our EGLE YouTube channel. So, and then we'll share them out with everybody who registered for the meeting and supplied an email address. So the best way to get your questions asked is as we go through, as Janelle's talking, if you have one, go ahead and just jot it in that question and answer box. We will have time to raise your hand and ask questions, but sometimes it's just faster to do the Q&A written first. And I will start with those questions just to let you know when we get to that portion of the night. If you are calling in and you have a question or you want to make a comment when we get to that section, and I'll remind you of this, I promise, you're going to go ahead and just type #2 into your phone, and that will raise your hand for me so that I can see that you want to speak. So at this point, Janelle, I think I'm going to pass it over to you. I thought there might have been one more slide for me, but maybe not. Nope. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to you if you want to share your screen and then take it away. Be perfect. Yep, that looks good. Let's see if I can hear you.
Perfect. Thank you, Jen.
All right. Got it.
Hi, everyone. My name is Janelle Trohill, and I'm the permit engineer for the Bridging North America, or BNA, air permit application. I worked with a team of air quality staff here at EGLE to review this application. Before we get into the details of the BNA proposal, I'm going to briefly talk about what the air quality does and how the permitting process works. Air pollution comes from many different sources, including power plants, fuel burning vehicles, and various industrial sources. The overall mission of the Air Quality Division is to protect public health and the environment. We provide this protection by using our authority under state and federal laws through the regulation of industrial sources. Air Quality Division staff do many different things. For example, we monitor levels of air pollutants. We look at different air toxics to make sure public health is protected. We conduct inspections of regulated facilities, and we review applications and write permits for sources of air pollutants like the BNA proposed facility that we're talking about tonight. We do this to make sure that the sources comply with the air quality rules and regulations that are in place to protect public health. The Air Quality Division has the authority to permit sources of air pollutants. However, I want to point out a few items in the draft permit that is not covered, that we do not have the ability to regulate. These include zoning, so where the facility chooses to locate, noise, and traffic on public roads. You will want to talk to your local government if you have questions or concerns about these issues. So I'd like to give you a simple overview of the permitting process. First, the company decides they want to install, modify, or construct a source of air emissions like Bridging North America's proposed facility. The company then submits a permit application. The application is reviewed by an engineer like myself, who reviews the information from the company to decide if the proposed process can meet the applicable state and federal air quality regulations. During the review, other AQD staff are involved to help with different aspects of the review, such as pollutant emissions and modeling. If these rules and regulations are met, the engineer creates a proposed draft permit. Once the proposed draft permit is reviewed and approved by the AQD inspector, it is sent to the company for review. Now, if public comment is required, as in this case, then the proposed draft permit is posted for public comment. Public comment is a very important part of the permitting process. Once the comment period ends, we evaluate all the comments received. The comments can lead to changes in the permit and the proposed final decision. Finally, a decision is made on the permit application. This decision may be to approve the permit as written, approve the permit with changes, or to deny the permit. This decision is based on the ability of the company's proposal to meet the air quality regulations. We cannot base our decision on the need of the proposed project or the popularity of the proposal. BNA is requesting an air permit to install called a PTI for new natural gas and diesel fuel burning equipment to support the future U.S. port of entry and the Gordie Howe International Bridge. The equipment is intended to ensure that the border crossing is open at all times, including during power outages. The proposed equipment will be located in the Delray area of Detroit at 1001 Springwells Court, shown by the yellow shaded area on the map. Now, before we get into the details of the proposed permit for BNA, I'll talk about the purpose of a permit to install, or PTI. The air permit has to be obtained before the company can install the proposed equipment. This way, we know that what the company wants to build can meet the air quality rules and regulations. Air permits have conditions or rules companies are required to follow. These conditions make sure the company will meet the air quality rules and regulations that protect public health. These conditions have emission limits, restrictions on how the process operates, which can include air pollution control devices, monitoring and record-keeping requirements, and testing of air emissions. I'll talk about the proposed permit conditions for BNA later. While reviewing the proposed project like the BNA facility, we look at a number of items. Based on the proposed level of emissions and the proposed equipment, we determine what kind of technical review is needed, including which rules and regulations apply. When doing this, we use worst case assumptions. We evaluate the proposed criteria pollutant emissions to ensure they meet health-based standards set by the federal government. Computer simulations, referred to as modeling, were performed for nitrogen oxides, acrolein, and formaldehyde. This computer simulation puts an imaginary air measuring device in hundreds of locations around the area BNA wants to build. These imaginary monitors look at whether air emissions would be below the standards. We evaluate the proposed toxic air contaminants emissions to ensure they meet the AQD health screening levels. We make sure there are air pollution control devices, if necessary, to limit air emissions so the state and federal regulations are met. Now let's talk a little bit about the health-based standards. This slide has a lot of acronyms on it. There is a set of 6 pollutants called criteria pollutants, which have certain health-based levels set by the federal government, called the National Ambient Air Quality Standards, or the NAAQS. The criteria pollutants are particulate matter, nitrogen oxides, sulfur dioxide, carbon monoxide, ozone, and lead. During the permit review, these levels were looked at to see if a computer modeling demonstration was required. Nitrogen oxides required a computer to be used to ensure health would be protected by what Bridging North is asking for. These modeling results were compared to the health-based NAAQS for nitrogen oxides and found to be below the standard. We will discuss more about the modeling demonstration later. The NAAQS are health-based levels set by the federal government and applied to ambient air. Ambient air essentially means outdoor air. So these standards are for the air the general public breathes. The NAAQS are developed from research studies and are designed to protect against health problems like heart and lung problems, learning problems, and premature death. Now, this map shows where the fence line for the property in yellow. The Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA, states that ambient air is the portion of the atmosphere external to buildings, which the general public has access. So this usually means that ambient air at the fence line or starts at the fence line of the property. But a conservative approach was taken when completing the air dispersion modeling for this project. Since the U.S. Port of Entry will have the public within the fence line at times, everything was looked at as ambient air inside the fence line, except the location of the actual buildings. This map shows how the modeling was set up, and the little yellow dots are the virtual air monitors that the computer sets to check if the project emissions will meet the NAAQS. This approach is considered a worst-case scenario. In addition to federal standards, Michigan has health-based screening levels for other pollutants called toxic air contaminants, or TACs. Potential air impacts are compared to the AQD's health-based screening levels. The screening levels are designed to protect against health problems like developing cancer or breathing problems. For BNA, the proposed emissions will not violate the health-based screening levels. One part of figuring out the applicable rules for the project is the location of the facility. This map shows the current attainment status for the state of Michigan. An area is considered to be a non-attainment if air concentrations of certain pollutants are above the national standards. Michigan currently has non-attainment areas for 2 pollutants, ozone and sulfur dioxide, or SO2. BNA will be located in a portion of Wayne County, which is an area that is considered a non-attainment for sulfur dioxide and ozone, which is regulated through 2 other pollutants, volatile organic compounds, or VOCs, and oxides of nitrogen, or NOx. If the overall increase in emissions from the project for those pollutants is high enough, then the pollutant needs to go through what is called a non-attainment permit review. However, the emissions from this project were below the levels to trigger that type of review. Now, this map shows where the air monitors are located around the area where the proposed equipment will be located. In 2018, 3 new monitors were placed and conduct ambient air quality monitoring. Ambient air quality monitoring to provide a baseline during the construction of the Gordie Howe International Bridge. These monitors are used during the construction to determine the effect on the air quality due to earth moving and home demolition equipment, as well as during future years of operation to better understand the role that traffic plays in air quality. The parameters measured include criteria pollutants and black carbon, a component of diesel exhaust. Routine meteorological parameters such as wind speed, wind direction, and temperature are also collected. This data can be found on our website. In the following slides, I'll give you a summary of the BNA proposed facility. BNA is proposing to install a natural gas-fired cogeneration unit, diesel-fired emergency engines, a natural gas-fired emergency engine, and miscellaneous natural gas-fired heaters and boilers. The cogeneration unit will be used to offset the cost of power purchased from the grid. The diesel-fired emergency engines will only be used in the case of a power outage, and the boilers will generate steam to be used for heating and cooling buildings. Now, what is a cogeneration unit? A cogeneration unit, also known as a combined heat and power unit, generates electricity and captures the heat that would otherwise be wasted to provide useful thermal energy that can be used for space heating, cooling, domestic hot water, and industrial processes. The parts of this equipment include a turbine or engine, a generator, and a heat recovery unit. And the cogeneration unit combusts fuel in the engine or turbine, which is attached to a generator to produce electricity that is sent to the grid or to a facility. The hot exhaust gases from the engine are captured in a heat recovery unit, which could be used for building heat or to heat hot water for steam production. The proposed draft conditions contain requirements to make sure the emissions they would actually emit do not exceed what was reviewed. This includes the proper use, monitoring, and operation of the equipment and any control devices. The diesel-fired emergency engines are allowed to only operate 3 out of 4 at one time and are only allowed 200 hours per year. And the boilers are only allowed to operate 4 out of 5 units at one time. An operating hours restriction will limit the cogeneration unit emissions. The annual emission limits will be used for compliance, and hourly emission limits will be used to demonstrate compliance with stack testing. The proposed permit requires initial stack testing for the cogeneration unit for NOx, CO, VOC, and formaldehyde. If the engine is not operated in a certified manner, subsequent testing for NOx, CO, and VOC would be required for the engine every 8,760 hours of operation or every 3 years, whichever comes first. I can answer any other questions you have about the proposed project and permit conditions, but first, I want to have Jeff, the Assistant District Supervisor, talk a little bit about the inspection process for a facility like what BNA is proposing.
Well, thank you, Janelle. Hello, everyone. My name is Jeff Korneski, and I'm the Assistant District Supervisor for the Air Quality Division in the Detroit District Office. So there's a number of ways that inspectors in our office check for compliance. The primary method is by inspections, usually unannounced. So when we conduct an inspection, we are on site at the facility, and we're looking at everything related to the permit and other state and federal regulations. This means physically looking at the equipment and the operation of the equipment, including the stacks associated with the equipment and the control devices and their proper operation. And then reviewing the records that are required by the permit. New sources such as this one are typically inspected within the first year after the startup and then at regular basis thereafter. But we also go on site for other reasons, such as, for example, when Janelle indicated that the cogeneration unit will be subject to stack testing. And typically our inspectors and a specific element of our group, which are dedicated to stack testing, will be on site at the time of the stack test to make sure that both the test is operated correctly and the equipment is operating correctly. Additionally, a source like this will submit annual emissions reports to our emissions inventory, which will be uploaded to the state and federal government. And we would also conduct a site visit if we ever had complaints for the facility. After we conduct inspections, we write a report, and once the report is finalized, we post it to the Eagles website, and it is made available to the public. So now I'm going to pass this back to Jennifer Dixon, and she'll bring us into the question and answer portion of the night.
Yeah, thanks to both of you. If you guys want to just leave your cameras on, I'm going to invite other staff to turn theirs on as well. Just go ahead and remind people how to ask questions during this portion. So I do at least have one question in the question box right now. So that's awesome. Actually, it's a multi-part question, which I think has some really good points in it. So we'll get to that in just a second. I know we do have some folks on the phone. So I wanted to just talk about a couple of the things that Janelle mentioned during her presentation. I know we showed some maps with some air monitoring locations and things like that. So I just wanted to share with you, if you are calling in by phone and you would like to get follow-up information via email and you didn't supply your email address already, if you want to just jot down the voicemail number at the end of this today, and if you do have an email address or you want to get a copy of the slides in some other way where you can see that information, that would be awesome. And we can definitely supply that in other ways. I'm going to be sending a copy of the slides out to folks and a follow-up email with a link to the recording and things like that. So just wanted to let you know, if you weren't able to visually see things with us this evening, I know that's kind of hard when it comes to maps and those 3 new air monitoring locations that Susan's group deals with are really important to this project. So just want to make sure everybody can see that as well. So again, if you have a question and you want to speak your question out loud, you can also raise your hand and we'll try to unmute you at that time too. So, all right. And then also just a reminder on your phone, if you did want to raise your hand, you would just type #2 into your phone. So there's some really good questions here. I'm going to kind of run through them one at a time, just because there's some multi-part questions. And this is going to go to, I think we're going to start with Susan, because the first part of this question deals with the air monitors and one of the things that they monitor, which is black carbon. So I know if you can just kind of talk a little bit about, just because I'm not sure if we're looking at only these 3 monitors that are looking at black carbon. Do we have other monitors in the area that are also looking at black carbon? So you can talk a little bit about that. And then I'm going to pass that to Janelle. So Janelle, I just wanted you to be ready for this question afterwards. Can you talk a little bit about whether or not black carbon was considered during the permit? Did we use some of that monitoring data? And if so, how was that used? So Susan, I'm going to pass it over to you first.
Sure, that's a great question. So around the Gordie Howe Bridge, as Janelle mentioned, there are 3 new sites that were constructed back in 2018. And all 3 of those sites do measure black carbon, along with many other pollutants and parameters. Another site that mentions it is one that was on that map, very close to the BNA kind of area, that we call Southwest Detroit. And that particular monitoring station is on Waterman Street. In the past, we also used to refer to it as the former Southwestern High School site. So just to kind of lay some groundwork there. That location also measures black carbon, along with a lot of other parameters. Black carbon is also measured at the Dearborn site, which is at Salina Elementary School, and also to the south at our Allen Park site. That location also measures black carbon. So those are kind of the ones in the area that measure that pollutant. a lot of the monitors that are in this area measure many of the criteria pollutants, such as carbon monoxide, nitrogen dioxide, sulfur dioxide, particulate matter, and lead. So many of the locations around this location measure those different criteria pollutants, along with some other parameters. So if anyone has any questions about more details about kind of what we measure where, definitely feel free to ask that question, but I don't want to hijack all the time because I can talk about this all day.
Well, and I think that's good. And just as you're chatting, I think one of the things that we'll share in our follow-up email is the link to the air monitoring locations. We do have an interactive map where you can actually click on the monitor and it will tell you all the different things that it looks for. And so just to remind people that ambient air is, that air that's sort of in the breathing zone that we would expect people to be exposed to. So these monitors are really important, and it's great that we have so many in this area because we can look for these kinds of things. And so I don't know, Janelle, do you need me to repeat the question there? Or are you good with?
Oh, I'm good.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, unfortunately, carbon black is from mobile sources, and so it was not considered during part of the review and looked at as part of the review.
So one of the things that I know we had mentioned earlier is, along with the carbon black emissions, we're also looking at NOx emissions from mobile sources and other sources in the area. But that was one of the things that I think we did look at. So can you talk a little bit about maybe how we look at that? And if you have to pass this to Jim to talk about the modeling portion of looking at that, that would be fine too. But, how did we look at that pollutant specifically? If you can just talk about that.
NOx, when NOx is modeled and how it was looked at with the emissions, modeling, they take into account the background concentrations at the monitors when they do the modeling and submit it for review. So whatever is being measured at the monitors, whether that's from mobile sources or other industrial sources in the site, it is taken into account in the background as part of the modeling.
So Jim, I don't know if you have anything that you want to add to that from your review.
That's a pretty good summary. The new standard that EPA gave to us, the 1 hour standard, was basically meant as a roadside standard. And so while it was mentioned that we don't directly regulate mobile emissions, it is taken into account when we add the background concentration to the modeled results. And again, that background number and the modeled results that we compare to the EPA standard is taken into effect that we are looking at mobile sources as well. So again, while we don't necessarily regulate it, we do look at it through the model or the monitoring.
Wonderful, thank you. So there was another question about monitoring that I wanted to bring up to you, Susan, since we have you thinking about that. The question was, what is the most eastern air monitor around this location? Is there one, to the east there?
All right, so I would say the most maybe eastern is probably going to be that Southwestern High School on Waterman. That site is actually just to the west of where basically the plaza is going to be. But because of the property that was needed for the Gordie Howe Bridge site, there really wasn't any public area kind of east of the bridge, kind of between that plaza and the river. There really wasn't any property there where we could really have a monitor. A lot of the property in that vicinity was needed for the bridge, and they have to have certain amounts of setbacks. So I know there was a lot of kind of buying up a property and that sort of thing. But yeah, we don't really have anything east that would be close to the river.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
All right, so, and I just want to let you guys know that a couple times my internet has been unstable. So if for some reason I lock up and I'm making a really ridiculous face, I'm going to apologize in advance for that. And that's why I have Jim here, so he can kind of take over the Q&A if something crazy happens. Hopefully it won't, hopefully it'll be fine. Okay, so this was a great question. I'm actually going to pass this one to Jeff. So the question was, what happens to the reports after they're posted to the public? So I think this is kind of twofold, and these are the things that we kind of manage internally. So when a company gives us a report about something that they're required to do under a permit and we evaluate it, if it's bad or wrong or deficient in some way, if you can talk a little bit about the process of how we take action on that, or how that is kind of put out there, because we don't just get them and then post them. So that's one part of it. Also, when we do an inspection, you mentioned we will post that to the internet. So, what happens if something is deficient in that way? So if you could talk a little bit about that process, that would be great.
Sure. So as Jennifer mentioned, so we don't often post the actual raw records or information to the website. Maybe that time will be coming in the near future, but it isn't with us now. With the one exception is we will post the summaries of our stack test results. So that's usually the one thing that gets posted to the website. Everything else is summarized or should be summarized in our inspection reports, which are posted to the web. And if there's something in the records that are deficient, and what action we would take really depends upon the nature of the deficiency. So suppose that, in this case, the facility is supposed to log the startup and shutdown of, for example, the boilers to ensure that not more than a certain number are operating at the same time. Well, if they forget to perhaps, fill the log out in a given day, that might be a minor occurrence. We might note it in our inspection report, but take no further action. On the other hand, if they were to operate certain amounts of their equipment far in excess of the limits that Janelle has put into the permit, then that would be a more substantial transgression, and we might issue a violation notice for that, and we might take further action depending upon how long or how much above the limit that they went above. Usually, if we have a stack test that indicates that we're measuring emissions in the exhaust, which are in excess of the permit limits, presuming that the permit is issued, that is usually a serious transgression and will often result in a violation notice being issued and perhaps escalated enforcement with the goal to getting a consent order and provisions that they may test at a more frequent basis or install some other control to bring the emissions down. So the action really depends upon the frequency and the length of the transgression and the seriousness of it. You'll notice that when you look at draft permits that we have, at the bottom of every condition are certain numbers in bold, and those are the underlying applicable requirements for each one of the conditions that, for example, Janelle has written into the permit. And really, when you violate one of the conditions, you're really violating one of those applicable requirements underneath.
Or rules. We'll just call them rules. The rules.
Yes. And so that's really what we're basing our actions on, is which rules have been violated and the significance of those rules to public health and the environment.
Yep, thanks for that, Jeff. I know we call them underlying applicable requirements, and in air quality division, you'll find, as Janelle spoke of on one of her slides, here are a lot of acronyms. So we try to let you know what those are, but then definitely ask us if we're talking about something and you forgot what that acronym meant, or we're just not being clear. Like, please feel free to point that out to us, because I want to make sure that you guys are getting the information that you need while we're here tonight. This is another question for you, Susanna, because I'm not as super familiar with the area. I don't know the answer to this. Otherwise, I would have just let them know. But the question was if there's any air monitors near Clark Park. So I don't know where Clark Park is specifically, and I'm not sure if you do either. This was something that we could also let folks know later if we need to as well.
Yes, actually, I do know where Clark Park is. That was actually an area where we were looking in terms of trying to place monitors. And one of the issues with finding a good location is you have to have a place where you can get access to power and you can be a certain distance away from trees. So that makes some areas really challenging. So in terms of monitoring stations that are near Clark Park, on the same side of the freeway, or kind of on the west side of I-75, we have a monitoring station that's at Military Park, and that's Military and Regular streets. So there's a little park there, and we have one monitoring station there that we call Military Park. On the other side of 75, probably like as a crow flies, this one is probably the closest to Clark Park, but it is on the east side of I-75. And it's the station that is at the Detroit 4th Precinct. So that's at Fort Street and McKinstry.
Susan, do you want me to have Janelle pull that map back up again? Because we're just getting I got another question about the Waterman site and things like that. Would that be helpful? Janelle, do you mind doing that? Just pull that back up again. And I know folks that we have on the phone, it's going to be hard for you to see that specifically, but it might be just easier for people. Yeah, there we go. All right. So I don't know, Janelle, if you can kind of maybe use your cursor to try to point to the ones that Susan's talking about, so that can maybe be a little bit clearer. And I know that might be hard for you because I know you don't know the names of them necessarily, but I think this might be easier.
So the one with the cursor right now, that is the Military Park site. And that's not too far from Clark Park. It's a little bit south. And then the one, that one there, that is the Detroit 4th Precinct site. So pretty close to Clark Park, but on the other side of the freeway. And then Jen, did you say there was a question about the Waterman Street?
Well, the question was that, the person thanked you for giving that information, but it was regarding the ones that are more east. And so they were thinking that some of those new locations were a little bit more east than the Waterman site.
Oh, okay.
And this might be something too, we'll share Susan's information at the end. If you want to give her a call, or even if you want to give me a call or something, and we can definitely walk you through the monitoring stations, show you how to use the online map where you can click on these and it will show you all the different things that are being measured at each location. It just might give a more comprehensive view. It's a little hard to do that in Zoom. Sometimes those sort of interactive maps are really slow and these kinds of things, but it's definitely something that we might consider at a subsequent meeting if we ever have one. But definitely reach out if you are interested in that. So let me know too if that's not helpful, or you want some more information on that. So I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen back again a minute. And I did want to show everybody's names here. All right. Okay, so we've got a hand up for questions. So hold on for just 1 second and I'm going to unmute. We've got a few people that have their hands up. So I'm going to go right to Maggie Canlin. Just hold on 1 second. I'm going to hopefully unmute you here. Should be, I can hear you. So go ahead and ask your question.
Thanks. Yeah, Maggie Striz-Calnan here with Southwest Detroit Environmental Vision. We're a local environmental nonprofit group, and we've got over 100 members and stakeholders in Southwest. And we're following the issue. Thank you for holding this hearing and question and answer session. I'm wondering if, and it's a little bit of an arm's length question, but the governor has an environmental justice advisory committee. And I'm wondering if EGLE is considering any recommendations from that committee that would increase awareness or opportunities to engage in permitting processes like this, which is a new permit to install and not an expansion, or any changes to the permit process that came out of EJ advisory committee recommendations.
Yeah, Maggie, that's a great question. And we've definitely been getting that more recently. And unfortunately, at least at this point, without some legislative changes, we don't really have the ability to consider EJ in the permit decision itself. Where we do consider some EJ aspects is when we're thinking about, so going back to, the company sends us a request for a permit, right? So right there, we're kind of looking at what do we need to review? How can we get this information out? What are our limitations? So one of the things that we really focus on from an environmental justice perspective, especially when we have communities that have come to us or we know are identifying as EJ, is looking at what other ways can we do outreach? Is there translation needed? So for instance, in this case, we translated a lot of our more high level documents, not our super technical documents, but our high level documents and some of our communications into Spanish, because we understand that there's a larger Spanish speaking community in this area. So we want to make sure we're doing that. We're trying to do different ways of doing outreach in communities like this. And then we're also looking at it from just a perspective of, how do we do that communication? Is there people on the ground that we can sort of work with that are going to help amplify that message and get more people to the table, so that this discussion is more well-rounded than it would have been in the past? So unfortunately, to be direct with your question, is we don't have the ability to use environmental justice considerations in our decision-making for permits at this point. But we as much as possible when we're using our limited English proficiency plan and things like that. So I know that's probably not a perfect answer to your question, but hopefully it was helpful. I do have a couple other questions or hands up here. So Dana Mohammed. We should be able to hear you, hopefully, if you want to try to unmute.
Hello?
Oh, there we got you. Perfect.
Hi, this is the public comment section, right?
Nope, this is actually just the question and answer. So if you want to save, if you have a comment and you want to save that, we're going to be starting in about 15 minutes, if not before.
Oh, okay. No, I didn't have any questions.
Okay, perfect. I'm going to go ahead and lower your hand. And then if you don't mind just raising again, once we get to that public comment session, that would be great.
Thank you.
All right. So Teresa Landrum, if you would like to ask a question, go ahead.
Good evening, and this question is for Ms. Kilmer and Ms. Trohill. It's around black carbon, and it was mentioned that there are areas near the point of entry and the bridge. The question is around the modeling and the mapping and the monitors. Was there any consideration given to black carbon as being a mobile source, passing more densely populated areas along the I-75 truck route that are close to the I-75 expressway? I know we have a monitor at Mark Twain Boynton, and I wanted to know if you guys knew if that monitored for black carbon in respects to backups. I know that the point of entry, there's been talk about how they have planned it and designed it so it wouldn't be a lot of backups. But in light of the last few, a couple of weeks ago, when they had the blockade and the trucks were backed up, idling along I-75, right near the rec center and the school. So has there been any consideration given to monitors placed along the truck route that would lead up to the point of entry? Thank you.
So Susan, do you want to talk a little bit about some of your interactions that you've had with that?
Sure. So one part of the question was about the Mark Twain school location. That site's actually run by Marathon, and that site does not measure black carbon. It does measure other parameters such as carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide, total reduced sulfur, and particulate matter that's the PM10 size. And they also measure volatile organic compounds every 6 days. But the Marathon sites, including Mark Twain, does not measure black carbon. As far as the monitoring sites and truck routes, so the Detroit 4th Precinct site is on Fort Street, Fort McKinstry, which I think is a pretty heavily traveled street for trucks and just other traffic. And it's also very close to I-75. We have another site that we call Trinity, or Trinity St. Mark's. That site is on Fort Street down by Dearborn. So that's kind of on the southern kind of end of the bridge area. And then again, Waterman Street, Southwest Detroit site, that site also measures black carbon. And that site is going to be very close to the plaza area. So I guess that's kind of what I can say about what we have in that area. I'm not exactly sure like what some of the truck routes would be other than Fort Street.
I-75 is one of the main thoroughfares that will lead there. And right there near Mark Twain School, there is a sound barrier wall, but going past the rec center where children will be outside playing soccer, baseball, and what have you, there is nothing. No, we know that a few years ago, there was a monitor placed there by the EPA. And after that monitoring, it showed that that was an area of concern. So I think that we'll need to have some discussion with Marathon as well as discussion with Eagle regarding further stationary monitors. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate
Thank
that,
you.
Teresa. Thank you so much for bringing that up to us as well. All right, I have a couple other questions in the chat that I wanted to get to. Janelle, can you briefly talk about the types of stack testing or any other testing that are currently included in the proposed permit for me?
Yeah, the main testing, like I mentioned, was the cogeneration unit that they have to do an initial stack test. I believe it's within 180 days of startup. They have to test the 4 pollutants that I had stated. And then there's a provision, or there's something in the federal regulations that as long as they keep up their certification, which means they have to maintenance it or keep on the maintenance schedule with the manufacturer and keep operating it as the manufacturer states, then they don't have to come through and do subsequent stack tests. This is also the case with the other emergency engines. If those emergency engines aren't kept in a certified manner, they would have to do stack testing on the same schedule of that every 3 years or the 8,760 hours, whichever one comes first for operation hours.
Okay, thank you.
I think that's it, yeah.
I thought that was it too, so I wasn't sure. So sorry if I was like talking over you. So I asked Jim to share the link to the interactive map in the chat. And yes, I'm talking about the interactive air monitoring map. So he's going to be sending that to all of you in the chat quickly here. And like I said, when I send my follow-up email to everybody, I will include that as well, just so you guys have a kind of a comprehensive list of all the things that we chatted about tonight. There's another question just about potential increases in NOx. This kind of goes along with what Teresa was talking about with the bridge traffic itself. So I think this was mentioned earlier, but because we're talking about this facility and air quality, unfortunately, especially in this permitting action, isn't including things about mobile sources. So that would be cars, trucks, things like that. Those air monitors are in place to kind of capture anything that's going to be changing as far as the bridge traffic goes, but we won't necessarily have that information until, after things get started. So I know Susan's group is definitely keeping an eye on that. And it is one of the things, I know Teresa said we do need some more monitors there, and I think that's definitely a point of discussion. But we are lucky that this is an area where we do already have a really good concentration of air monitors, which is really helpful for us. This question, I'm going to send this to you. Perspective and things that we don't necessarily have control over. So just to kind of go back to one of Janelle's earlier slides, when we get a permit application from a company, they're sort of setting the parameters of the things that they're asking us for. And we have certain things that we can require them based on the rules and regulations. And then we have other things that we have the ability to do that. So this question is around using other sources of energy for this facility. So, was there talk or discussion, or do we have the ability to influence a company or, create a situation where they have to use a different form of energy than what they've requested? So you talk a little bit about that. That would be helpful too.
Yeah, unfortunately, the way that the regulations are stated is we review what is submitted. We can't make a determination on whether they should have renewables, things like that. We just review what the information that is submitted. The only authority we have is if they use the correct control, things like that with what is submitted.
So I know that's can be pretty frustrating sometimes. Considerations for alternative forms of energy are definitely things that are brought up often. I know EGLE has those conversations outside of necessarily air quality from a broader perspective that's happening, but so far it hasn't been trickled down to us, similar with environmental justice things that we're allowed to consider or force change when it comes to making a permit decision. Simone, I see that you have your hand up. I don't know, I think you want to ask a question, so I'm going to go ahead and unmute you if you want to do that. Or at least you should be able to unmute yourself. I guess that's kind of more how it works. I'm going to try it one more time just to see if I can get you there. All right, well, hopefully we can get Simone unmuted because I know she wanted to make a comment as well, and for whatever reason. Oh, there you go. Now I see you. Go ahead.
Hello, this isn't
Yep.
Simone. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, and it's odd. I apologize. It does say that this is Simone, so I apologize. Please introduce yourself if you don't mind, and if you have a question,
No problem.
go ahead.
This is Pastor Kevin Casillas, First Latin American Baptist Church, resident in Southwest Detroit, president of the Southwest Detroit Coalition, Benefits Coalition. And I had a couple of questions. I apologize. I had a connection problem. And you may have talked about this already from the previous questions. But I had basically three questions, comments. The first question has to do with your model. A model is only as good as the information that's inputted into it. So I heard the word imaginary at one point, and a model is just that, a model, and not actual of what is occurring. So in terms of the data points, I think I got the answer to this question, but was there actual readings that were used to develop this model? Or is it all simulation based on the equipment that's going to be installed? Secondly, are we taking into account the cumulative impact of all sources in the area? Here in Southwest Detroit, we may not have all the engineering degrees you have and know all the nuances that you know about all the stuff that we breathe, but we know when things stink. And we have neighbors and family members with asthma, and kids in schools with learning deficits and special needs affected by the pollution in our air. And we just want to make sure that you guys making decisions keep that front and center, that this is not just about minimally achieving a certain standard that the law requires, but impacting human life and the neighbors of this facility that's being built. And so we're really concerned about the human impact. And so the question first was, in your model, what specific readings were used? I did hear the part about some of the background and the fact that it's off the street. So there was some of the mobile sources that might have been brought into that. But we're just concerned about approvals of permits like this, taking into account the cumulative impact of all the pollution sources in Delray and Southwest Detroit, and to make sure that it's real information that's going into these models as it impacts real lives and families and kids and elderly that live close to this project. And the other question was, this is a little bit separate from this specific permit, but since you guys with EGLE have been monitoring what's going on, did you notice any spike in some of your carbon readings, some of the different particular matters with the protest in Canada and the trucks lined up for days on the Canadian and the US side? So I know that's kind of a separate question, but one that's relevant because of the cumulative impact of all these sources, mobile, stationary, all kinds of industry concentrated in this community. that just makes us really nervous as neighbors. And, you know, we really want to make sure that decisions are made with real information, and that decisions are made taking into account the quality of life issues that are affected by decisions like these. Thank you.
No, thank you. I appreciate you asking those questions and for bringing up our use of the word imaginary. And I know that's an attempt to try to get people to understand that this isn't an actual physical thing that's in your yard. So I do want to have Jim talk about what goes into the model a little bit more. And I think that might be helpful. It definitely is something that we have to use the computer to tell us what the impacts will be if these certain things happen as the permit has been sent to us. So that it's helpful. It's a really good tool. It is based on real information, but obviously because the facility isn't there yet, this is the best way we have to predict a worst case scenario. And we want to look at what could be the worst case, because that's going to impact how the permit is going to actually be written. So I want to have Jim, and this is going to unfortunately be our last questions before we get to the comment period. And I would encourage you also, if you want to make an actual comment for the record, to potentially repeat some of what you said once we get to the hearing portion. But I wanted Jim to talk about what actually goes into the model, if he can give some examples of that. And then I want Susan, if you can talk about what we saw in some of the monitors that are closer to the bridges where the Canadian impasse kind of was going on, after Jim gets done. And then we will be going to the hearing portion. So folks that want to make a comment on the record, we'll be getting to that in just a minute. So Jim, if you want to go ahead and do that, that'd be great.
Okay. Yeah, I think you touched on it pretty good, but I'll emphasize it. Since we cannot physically monitor the air quality impact of a proposed facility before it's built, the best we can do is we can approximate or calculate what the air quality impact will be using these sophisticated computer models. These models are developed and given to us by EPA. They have spent literally decades building these models. They're not just guesses. They do go out and they do field test these models. And so we've got fairly good reliability out of them. We feel like that they do a reasonably good job. And to emphasize the safety factor in that, we always assume a worst case. We always assume that the facility that we're looking at is emitting at their full legal potential. Now, in reality, will they ever do that? Probably not. So we overestimate that by calculating what's the worst they could ever do and assume that they do it all the time, and we put that into the model. I get a lot of questions at these hearings, can we have a monitor in my backyard? Well, no, that's not practical, and in reality, you wouldn't want one. So we place literally tens of thousands of these virtual monitors around the facility, and we call these receptor grid points. And in the nearby community there, we place them 25 meters apart, which is roughly 75 feet apart. So imagine a monitor out there in your neighborhood every 75 feet. And we take that out a fairly good distance. And our job is to make sure that we can identify both the location and the magnitude of the maximum impact. Now that's based on the model. You ask about the cumulative impact, you asked about the reality in there, and that's where we go back and we look at the monitor data in the same area. And what we will do is we will take the monitored values in that area along with the emissions of the other facilities in the area, and we will throw all those numbers inside the model and have it do that cumulative impact where you've got the facility impact, you've got the impact from your neighbors, you've got the background from the nearby monitor. Now, in this particular case, the Southwest High School monitor is virtually almost right on the property. And so we talked to EPA about that, and they agree that that basically is an on-site monitor. And so rather than throw the other nearby sources in with that model and use that monitor background, they agree that that would be double counting. So again, we use the worst case numbers in the model itself from the facility at their proposed legal emission rate. And we use basically the worst case numbers from the monitor there. And we add those together to give us a number that we consider that's the number we go to. We compare that number to the health-based standards, and we've got to make sure that it's underneath that. And in this case, we had a relatively high number. It was about 90% of the threshold, but it did pass because it was underneath. I don't know if that answered all of your questions about the cumulative impact.
Well, I think that was helpful, and I want to be careful when we talk about, this is a limited cumulative impact. I think we're not quite getting to what the asker would love us to do, what we would probably love to do. But I'm glad that you did talk about how we do include things, at least on an additive level and a cumulative level from that modeling standpoint. I think that that is pretty important. And I know we're after 7, so I want to be respectful of people's time and get to the hearing, but I do think it's important to have Susan address the issue of what did we see in the monitors during that truck barricade. So if you could just talk briefly about that, Susan, and then we're going to move
Sure.
to the hearing portion.
Sure. So as far as fine particulate matter PM 2.5, we did not see real high levels at these monitors that are in the Delray area. The Ambassador Bridge area is north of this location, but on these particular monitors, we didn't see real high numbers. As far as black carbon, the way that that data is collected is we have to physically go to the site and download that data and then look at it later. We don't have the ability to kind of look at it in real time like we do the PM2.5 data. So that said, we haven't had the opportunity to go to the sites, retrieve that black carbon data and review it for that time period of the truck blockade. But as I said, the fine particulate matter, we're not seeing real high spikes. We would see some elevated numbers here and there, but frankly, there was kind of a regional high particulate kind of situation happening in our state and in some other nearby states. So it was a little hard to, I guess, parse out whether this was a bridge issue or was this a regional particulate issue. But during that incident, we were keeping a real close eye on these monitors.
All right, thank you, Susan, for that. I know there might be a few other questions that we didn't quite get to, and there might be more clarification that folks want from this discussion. So again, just a reminder, and I'll remind you probably a couple other times, that the public comment period for this permit doesn't close until March 14th. So please reach out to us, have further conversation. If you want to provide further comments after tonight, we definitely welcome that. So if my panelists want to go ahead and turn their cameras off, I thank you very much for your participation today. And then Marianne, if you want to turn your camera on, we're going to go ahead and move over to the public hearing portion of the night. So I just want to let you know, just kind of go over things a little bit. I do have to read an opening statement that's kind of dry, so I apologize for that, but just to let you know how things will work. So remember that during the hearing portion, we aren't going to be responding to your questions. So you might ask them, they will be included as part of the record, but tonight during this hearing, we won't be directly answering those questions. We did have several people that responded in their registration that they wanted to make a comment tonight. So we're going to go ahead and start with those folks. So what I'm going to do once I read the opening statement is I'm going to read the first 3 names off. And once I read your name off, if you can raise your hand. I know that we did have someone who shared the registration link or the link to log in with several people. So it's just having the name show up a bunch of times. So if I call your name out, you can go ahead and raise your hand. Also, if you are one of those people, if you want to make a comment once we get to that time, you want to just type your name into the Q&A box so I can see what your name is, and then I'll be able to call on you. I think that'll be a little bit easier. Just want to make sure that I feel bad always calling people the wrong name, so I don't want to do that. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and read the opening statement, and then we'll start taking those comments on the record. So good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this public hearing. My name is Jennifer Dixon, and I am with the Environmental Support Division of the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy, or EGLE. And I will be the hearing officer tonight. We have Marianne Dolahanty, Air Quality Division Director, the decision maker for this permit application, and she will be listening on to the hearing tonight as well. This hearing is for a proposed permit to install for Bridging North America, who is proposing to install a new natural gas-fired cogeneration unit, new emergency engines, and other new miscellaneous equipment in support of the proposed U.S. Port of Entry and Gordie Howe International Bridge located at 1001 Spring Wells Court in Detroit, Michigan. I have a little bit of background information for you before we begin. The Air Quality Division is responsible for regulating sources of air pollutants to minimize adverse impacts on public health and the environment. The law governing those responsibilities is Part 55 of the Natural Resources and Environmental Protection Act. Before the company can install and operate the equipment they are requesting, they must obtain a permit that meets the requirements of Michigan's air quality control rules. This means the equipment must be capable of meeting state and federal emission standards, including the health-based standards. The proposed permit must also contain conditions that include emission limits and specific ways of operating the equipment to ensure that these standards are met. The purpose of tonight's hearing is to give anyone interested in the proposed installation and operation of this equipment an opportunity to provide further information the department may use in deciding whether to approve the permit to install or if there are additional issues to consider. Please note the proposed permit to install is still a draft permit. This does not mean the department has already made a decision. Instead, it reflects an initial technical review of the proposal. We hope having the details of the draft permit available will help you in providing comments. Everything in the draft permit remains open for comment and further consideration by the department, including whether the permit will be issued at all. Please recognize the department can only use the information you provide if it relates to the criteria the department must use in making a decision. For example, concerns related to local zoning, truck traffic, and noise are not within the department's authority. Some of you may want to simply express your support or your opposition to the proposed project. We'll be happy to make note of your position, but please understand the department is by law not allowed to base our decision on whether there is widespread support or opposition to the proposed project. This hearing is being recorded and your comments will be part of the information the department will consider in making its decision on the proposed project. The public comment period for this permit began on January 26, 2022, and will end at midnight on March 14th, 2022. Additional information may be submitted through that time via written or verbal comment during this hearing, by email or by voicemail. After the close of the public comment period, the decision maker will review all written and verbal comments received. All significant air quality related comments will be considered, at which point a final decision on the permit application will be made by the decision maker. The decision maker may deny the permit, approve as drafted, or approve with amendments. If approved, the decision will specify which provisions of the draft permit, if any, have been changed in the final permit and the reasons for that change. In all three scenarios, all interested parties, including anyone who was on the original mailing list, anyone who provided comments during the public comment period, and anyone who attended the public hearing, will be directly notified of the decision. Included in the mailing will be a letter from the decision maker regarding the decision and, if applicable, the approved permit. As stated previously, you may submit a written comment at any time to the email address provided, which we will provide later, or call in a comment to the public comment voicemail. You may also type the word comment into the question box and submit your comment in that way. I will read aloud all comments you submit via the question box unless you state do not read. If you would like to make a verbal comment, you may raise your hand and I'll unmute your line so you can speak. We will limit your comment time to 3 minutes. If you're speaking, I will do my best to let you know when you have about 30 seconds left. I'll do my best to address commenters in the order your hands were raised, but please bear with us as the technology does have some challenges for doing that. Please recognize department staff are here tonight to provide a fair opportunity for you to express your views on the proposed project and to listen to those comments. Thank you so much for your attention, and I will now begin calling the names of those who have indicated they would like to make a statement. So like I said, I do have some folks who indicated in their registration that they wanted to make a comment. So I'm going to go ahead and call on those first. And if you could raise your hand, that would be great because that will pop you up. All right. So the first three names I have are Senator Stephanie Chang, Thomasina, I apologize, Weston, and Simone Savojek. So if we can have those folks raise their hand. And then we'll go ahead and unmute your line. Alrighty. So this one says it is Simone, but I think it might not be. Simone, did you want to raise your hand there so I can unmute you? Let's try this one. This should be Simone here.
Okay, that worked.
Okay, perfect. Good. Glad we got it.
Great, thank you. All right, my name is Simone Sagovac. I'm commenting on behalf of the Southwest Detroit Community Benefits Coalition and a 30-year resident in the community. Our coalition has worked since 2008 to ensure protections and options for residents affected by this bridge project. There have been many groundbreaking gains delivering community benefits with this bridge, including programs for new windows and air filtration at specific homes and locating the new monitors to measure air pollution before and after the bridge is built, and we're grateful for that progress. However, overall emissions and specifically truck impacts have always been the central problem for this community, affecting residents' lives negatively every single day. This permit may be smaller, but is the first time since the 2008 Environmental Impact Statement that we are able to comment about air impacts with this project. The Environmental Impact Statement says border truck traffic will double and acknowledges this is an environmental justice community. The cost of this project has gone from $1.2 billion to over $6 billion today. Funding for community mitigation is relatively small, and there are still important unmet needs to protect people's health who will live with this project. This bridge will bring thousands of trucks into this area that are not here today. This induced demand and emissions must be considered in permitting and in delivering mitigation remedies. We understand that current federal standards and the state permitting processes are weak in protecting EJ communities where there are high concentrations of industrial activities and emissions. This proposed permit may just meet federal limits for nitrogen oxide and formaldehyde without accounting for emissions from the trucks and wind direction. We understand there's a larger context of cumulative and disproportionate impacts beyond this permit that must be considered. We need cumulative assessment of full impacts that can help EGLE identify steps beyond the permitting situation and as part of the permitting decision. We know EGLE is seeking to improve handling of environmental justice considerations, and we applaud your efforts to include community benefits in the Fiat Chrysler Air permit as an example. From the health impact assessment conducted in this community, findings show that residents living closest to the I-75 truck traffic are more highly vulnerable within the overall vulnerable area. This area is the most densely populated in the city with the most children and most children under 5 years of age. Asthma near I-75 is more than double within 500 feet of I-75 than beyond 500 feet for all age groups and 3 times higher for seniors. Diesel emissions specifically are the biggest contributor to unhealthy air being concentrated at our human level. We respectfully request that the parties involved make commitments to this environmental justice community, including a commitment to conduct a community impact assessment of all air toxics for full background of the area. This analysis can help EGLE identify next steps needed to protect this community, investment in a minimum of 2,000 trees to replace the other half of the 4,000 trees removed for the project, investment by the state of Michigan to create a buffer along the residential side of the North I-75 service drive to protect families. Thank you for your full consideration in approving a permit and providing environmental protections for vulnerable families in our community. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comment. I greatly appreciate that. So I had called Senator Chang and Thomasina Weston. I do not think Thomasina is on, but Senator Chang, I do see that you're on. So if you want to raise your hand when you're ready to make your comment, that would be great. I'm going to go ahead and call the next couple people, Teresa Landrum and Walid Fidema, which I don't know if Walid is on as well. And then Deb Sunmer, you're going to be the next one. So Teresa, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. You should be able to go ahead and make your comment whenever you're ready.
Thank you. And thank you, EGLE, for this opportunity to speak. Teresa Landrum from the Southwest Detroit area of 48217, an impacted area that has been a non-attainment for ozone, SO2, and other noxious odors. In light of the information that we have learned tonight, I ask and urge EGLE to consider monitors, stationary monitors to be placed along 4th Street in the Southwest Detroit area, coming from the south heading north to the point of entry, as well as I-75 coming south north to the exit that will lead to the point of entry. The consideration is in respects to the black carbon mobile sources emissions that will be coming from the trucks and the exposure of our children that are located nearby that will be at the Community Recreation Center and the Mark Twain Boynton School, as well as the densely populated area that I-75 runs over. So in light of that, I really urge for EGLE to consider mapping along those routes, placement of stationary monitors that monitor black carbon, as well as more vegetation to offset the roadside pollution. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Landrum. Greatly appreciate your comment. Okay, Ms. Sumner, if you would like to unmute yourself and make your comment whenever you're ready.
Thank you very much. I'm a Long Life Southwest Detroit resident, and we are, very much concerned about all of the pollutants that our area has been inundated with for decades, and we want to see these improved. We need EGLE to protect us, and use your authority to require that this applicant do the cumulative impact assessment regarding the air toxins, whether it is the formaldehyde concerns of emissions. This is the only way. You have to include the cumulative impact assessments to protect us. Okay, so we're looking also at being concerned with the nitrogen emissions, and so the modeling require the applicant to do the modeling and the monitoring of the predicted concentrations of the nitrogen oxygens from one, its machinery and equipment, and two, the increase of all the mobile sources of traffic at the new bridge. I want to implore you to look at, maybe with the community, let us help you look to place, and we love the fact that there is an air monitor at the 4th precinct. However, where we have the dense residential population, as you may know, it's across the freeway. Okay, we don't have people living along 4th Street and in the by the precinct. We'll visit the precinct, but so I want you to look. We need you to look at. I'm thinking about Earhart Middle School. Well, it used to be a middle school, but now it's PK through 8th. So if you can look at that school, because there's elevated hills and there's a few pine trees that they planted when they built the new school. There might be an ability, maybe there, or maybe we can, the community, we can help you, Hughter Farms and Hubbard Richard. We really need to have air monitoring over here as we sit adjacent basically to the Ambassador Bridge. And then when we have all of the traffic that sits on the freeway idling when the bridge is backed up. But
Ms. Sumner, I just want to let you know you have about 30 seconds left there.
Okay, I really appreciate all this information. You guys are absolutely very, very interesting. Jim and Susan and Janet, was it Janet? No, Janelle. And we appreciate this. And clearly, we just beg you to protect us and use your authority with the cumulative impact assessments. And we need the buffering, and we need the thousands of trees replanted. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comment. I appreciate that. I'm going to call a few more names. I see some folks already have their hand up, so that's great. So the next 3 names I'm going to call are Jose Alvarez, which I'm not sure if he's on or not, but Dana Mohammed and Bill Cheek are going to be the next 3. And then Sam Butler, I see you have your hand up already, and you are going to be right after that. So I'm going to go ahead and unmute Dana here in just a second. All right, Dana, whenever you are ready.
Hi, my name is Dana, and I work with the Michigan Environmental Justice Coalition. I'm here to support the Great Lakes Environmental Law Center and the requests for EGLE to require Bridging North America to conduct a comprehensive cumulative impact analysis. This must also model the impact of trucks that will use the facility, which will likely hit the threshold of illegal pollutants. This area near port of entry already has a high concentration of NOx and formaldehyde, and it's important that EGLE ensure no violations of the national ambient air quality standards and actively try to reduce the cocktail of pollutants and contaminants in a community that is heavily populated by Black and Brown people. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comment. The next person I have on my list is Bill Cheek. If you would like to make a comment, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you.
Okay.
I'm going to try one more time here, Bill.
Can you hear me now?
You might have to click unmute on your side. Just want to let you know.
How about now?
Jen, I can hear him.
Can you hear me now?
Froze. I can hear you, Bill. Yeah.
Okay.
Jen might have froze, so I think you could probably get started because I can hear you. So it means I think everyone else can hear you.
Great.
So you can go ahead.
Thanks. Bill Cheek, North Corktown resident. What are the total emissions from geothermal and solar? 0. So let's do that instead. Then there's no air monitoring, there's no stack inspections, no follow-up, no personnel involvement, and clean energy. My head's exploding. We're 21 years into the 21st century, and this is a plan for a 20th century energy plant. It's so dumb, it redefines the definition of dumb. But considering the backward Republican hillbillies running the state refused to fund one of the most important new trade crossings in the last 50 years, I suppose it isn't surprising this is what we ended up with. Delray and Southwest Detroit have suffered with some of the worst air quality in the United States for decades. I want to express my opposition to approval of this permit on the basis that in the 21st century, when technology is available at similar costs, that's emissions-free, any project proposing to increase the already out of compliance emissions should be denied. This project will also directly negatively impact the air quality at the adjacent Delray boat launch and historic Fort Wayne. I commented on the Gordie Howe Bridge Facebook page today about this lack of clean energy, and their retort was that this plan is equivalent to the emissions from a single diesel truck. And we know how many diesel trucks are going to be added to the mix down there already. But this is a diesel truck running 24/7, 365. And the argument, what's one more thing adding pollution to Southwest Detroit, is why Southwest Detroit has some of the unhealthiest air quality in the United States. Bridging North America should be embarrassed. They could have designed sustainability into this project, but they just couldn't be bothered. What a shameful disgrace. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Cheek. I appreciate you making your comment while I got kicked off. So that was wonderful. I'm glad that you could still continue to give your comment. And thank you, Jim, for jumping in there. So the next person that I have on the list is Sam Butler. Mr. Butler, hold on one second. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you.
Hi, can you hear me?
I definitely can. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you for the time. Hi, my name is Sam Butler. I'm a resident of Southwest Detroit, next to I-75 and the Canadian border. Our neighborhood has to endure a high volume of truck traffic already, and we are very concerned about the ongoing effects of truck emissions. We ask that existing and anticipated truck emissions be included in the modeling, especially for projects like this that will bring more trucks. Through the course of granting this permit, we urge you to consider a larger cumulative impact assessment along with additional buffering and tree planting. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your comment. So I have one other person on the list, and that is Gabriella Santiago Romero. And I'm not sure if she is on, so I'm going to give her a second just in case she's calls in or logged in as someone else. But then we do have other folks that have their hands up. So the next person that I have on my list here is Angela Garza. So Angela, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. So if you'd like to make your comment, that would be great.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we definitely can.
Okay, my name is Angela Garza, and I'm a resident of Southwest Detroit. I've lived in this area since 1972. And I agree with Deb Sumner and Simone. I think that they need to take care of Southwest Detroit. I live 4 houses from I-75. Where Susan said that the air monitor is, I'm right by that air monitor because I live on Clark, so McKinstry is the next street over, but the air monitor that she's talking about is on the 4th precinct. We need an air monitor on this side of 75 because not only is there Earhart Middle School, we also have a high school and we also have another elementary school. So I think they should find a way to put an air monitor over here to monitor the area. So, and I think we need to, we need a buffer and we need to have more trees planted. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you so much for your comment. I appreciate you taking the time. The next
thank
person,
you.
oh, no problem. The next person is Maggie Strees-Kalnin, and I apologize because I probably did not say your name properly. But if you would like to go ahead and make your comment, you can do that.
Yes, thanks. Yeah, Maggie Strees-Kalnin, rhymes with is. I am, as I said earlier, with Southwest Detroit Environmental Vision. Southwest Detroit Environmental Vision will submit comment in writing. Wanted to hear what folks were saying tonight on the hearing before we finalize comments, but I did want to say on my own behalf, I grew up in Melvindale. A lot of my family members are in Melvindale, although I'm not local anymore. But I wanted to share another comment related to the renewable energy potential. If a cogen plant has to be the option, to the extent that the state can influence this or the bridge company itself, please use renewable diesel or biodiesel, which is significantly lower emission as opposed to straight diesel in that generator. And to supplement the natural gas, please include hydrogen as soon as that becomes available as a supplement to the natural gas. And I would like to see additional assessment related to whether wind and solar could add to this cogen plant. If the wind and solar for some reason cannot meet the need that the cogen plant offers, then the cogen plant maybe is a thing that needs to be considered, but not without wind and solar. There certainly is a way to incorporate that as well. So making those comments on my own behalf, and I appreciate what everybody else has said tonight too. Thanks for the time.
Thank you for your comment. The next person that I have is Sarah Hughter. So Sarah, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you if you would like to make your comment.
Hi, can you hear me?
I definitely can.
All right, these comments are on behalf of Amy Schulz, professor at the U of M School of Public Health. The area where the bridge port of entry is located experiences cumulative environmental risks, lifetime cancer risks, and lifetime respiratory risks associated with exposure to air toxics in the top 10% of risk in the entire state of Michigan. Residents living near the I-75 corridor and heavily trafficked roadways experience increased asthma risk. These findings are consistent with evidence from national and international sources finding excess risk of health events for those living near heavily trafficked roadways. The bridge will bring additional traffic to these corridors, increasing the levels of air pollutants to which residents will be exposed. For these reasons, any new emissions in this area should be considered with particular care, as they will be contributing additional pollutants in an area that already experiences exposures in the 90th percentile for the state. Models run by the applicant indicate that NOx concentrations in communities near the bridge will be 177 micrograms per cubic meter of air. This is just below the national ambient air quality standard of 188 micrograms. These models incorporated data from the monitors on Waterman Street and 7 Mile Road, but did not consider the impact of NOx from increased truck and car traffic that will be drawn to the bridge. In addition, the applicant has not provided access to results from dispersion models. Maps showing how NOx produced will be dispersed into residential areas are essential to understand how the pollutants will affect nearby residents. Thus, EGLE should require more comprehensive modeling for NOx emissions, given that the predicted impact on nearby communities is very close to the national standard. Regarding its formaldehyde emissions, the applicant did not consider background concentrations of formaldehyde, nor did it consider emissions from other nearby sources such as industrial facilities or trucks. Therefore, EGLE should require the the applicant to conduct a cumulative impact analysis regarding formaldehyde to determine whether the emissions authorized by this permit in combination with emissions from other nearby sources will cause impacts above the secondary risk screening level. The main purpose of permits to install is to demonstrate that the proposed project will not cause violations of air quality standards. This is important given the high levels of cumulative risk and health risks that are already borne by residents of Southwest Detroit, many of whom are children under 5 and adults over 65. Finally, the setbacks of 100 feet surrounding the POE, supplemented with planting of approximately 150 trees, are insufficient to protect the health and well-being of residents. Setbacks recommended for health protection should be 500 feet or should include well-designed vegetative buffers. Additional setbacks or properly designed buffers should be used to reduce exposures to air toxics. In their absence, measures should be taken to reduce exposure and mitigate adverse health impacts. For example, enhanced indoor air filtration, sound buffers, and increased access to medical care. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comment. The next person that I have is Caitlin Stadler. Caitlin, if you would like to unmute and make your comment, that would be great.
Hi, I will be giving public comment on behalf of Senator Stephanie Chang as she had to jump off of this meeting. Thank you to EGLE for holding this public meeting. It is always important for the community to be able to learn what may be coming and to provide their ideas, questions, and concerns. Senator Chang would like to thank the residents and organizations who are on for their participation. First, Senator Chang would like to say that she's had a strong collaborative partnership over many years now with MDOT and the Windsor-Detroit Bridge Authority, and very much appreciates the ongoing and consistent dialogue about issues and our ability to work together to solve issues as they arise. The Cogeneration Unit that will be built on the Bridge Plaza is an energy efficient technology that will generate electricity and capture the heat that would otherwise be wasted to provide thermal energy to the Gordie Howe International Bridge Plaza. It's Senator Chang's understanding that the greenhouse gas emissions from this unit are expected to be much less than if the site were to use the local electrical grid. And we understand that many of the emissions are similar to a single truck engine with less sulfur, nitrous oxide, particulate, and carbon monoxide. While Senator Chang has no opposition to the permit moving forward and does believe this kind of cogeneration can ultimately be positive, there are, of course, broader community and environmental issues that deserve attention. Senator Chang would like to echo comments from Southwest Detroit residents that have been made on this hearing, as well as on so many other EGLE public hearings she's been on over the past 7 years, that one day, we hope soon, we'll be able to see cumulative impact assessment as part of EGLE's decision-making process. In the meantime, it would be a great goal to have a cumulative impact assessment done in Southwest Detroit that also puts the EJ screen to use and makes sure to include mobile sources given the nature of the project. Senator Chang's office has introduced legislation every year since 2015, 2016. That would require cumulative impact and environmental justice considerations in the permitting process. And it's our hope that one day that legislation will be signed into law. We also know that thousands of trees were removed a few years ago as part of the project. We understand vegetative buffering is already part of the existing plan for the Gordie Howe International Bridge, and we hope this can be enhanced. Related to this, we hope to continue our conversations with all the stakeholders involved about the need for greater buffering along the I-75 service drive. Lastly, we know we will continue our conversation with MDOT, the WDBA, and others about the potential future needs of the community as construction continues and as the bridge becomes a reality. Due to the community's advocacy and leadership and the support of WDBA and the state and the city, several historic community benefits packages, including air monitoring, health impact assessments, voluntary buyouts, and home repair, have come to fruition over the past 5 years and are being implemented. We will continue our work together to protect and enhance the quality of life, health, and safety of Southwest Detroit residents. Thank you for the opportunity to provide comment.
Thank you so much. The next person is Kim Hughter.
Hello, can you hear me? It looks like you can. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, my name is Kim Hunter. Hang on one second, I'm just getting my comments here together here. My name is Kim Hunter. I'm a lifelong resident of Southwest and a resident of Southwest Detroit. Asking you to protect residents around the facility by doing three things. First of all, creating a buffer there with I-75, something huge, and keeping the sound out. Plant about 2,000 trees, if not more, to suck up some of the poison, and do a cumulative impact assessment. One small note for scientific accuracy: please stop using the industry public relations term natural gas and always refer to it as a methane gas. Uranium, arsenic, and lead are also natural, and they are also deadly. In terms of cumulative impact, I asked the question in the chat, but you didn't get to it. I understand, not a problem. What's the practical effect of monitoring cumulative effect without regulating it? That's a rhetorical question. The answer is people die sooner than they would have. While there's resistance to including cumulative impact in your calculations, I hope it can impact your consciences. The folks in Southwest Detroit are already overburdened with pollution. If cumulative impacts affected political donations and/or profits of large corporations the same way they affect human health, the laws would protect us. But as it stands, all we have is your consciences. Do the right thing. We need a cumulative impacts assessment to tell us what we already know, that we need to protect people's health and maybe keep them from dying a little sooner in areas where people are richer and whiter. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. A comment? You should be able to unmute now. There we go. Now I see you.
Hi, this is Kristen Diag. I am calling on behalf of office of the council member Santiago Romero. She unfortunately had to unexpectedly jump off early, but she will be providing her public comment to the body this week. Thank you.
Thank you very much for commenting that so that we knew. I appreciate that. Okay, this next person does not have a name, so I'm going to, I've unmuted you and it says that,
hi, thank you.
There we go. If you can just make sure you say your name and if you have any affiliation, that would be appreciated.
Okay, great, thank you. My name is Raquel Garcia and I am with Southwest Detroit Environmental Vision. I'm also here to support Simone Segovac's comments and all the other comments that people have made, asking for a cumulative impact assessment that not only takes into consideration the equipment that is being proposed, but all of the 10,000 averaging trucks that we already have from the bridge, the Ambassador Bridge, and the potential trucks that are going to be coming down and onto this bridge as well. And I really appreciate Kim Hunter's comments about arsenic and methane being natural and also deadly. So we need to consider just the toxic soup that residents have been dealing with for many years. And in this moment of climate change and also environmental justice needs, it's really personally, I am a resident of Southwest Detroit, disappointing to see this proposed permit, this proposed equipment. We have so many potential other ways of powering this equipment, and we could be showing off what the future can look like and what we should be doing as a public entity, and inspiring young people to look at new technology and renewable fuel, renewable energy, and that we are not going down this path and instead continuously just barely eking by, that that we might just barely impact health it's just really a disappointment, and it's just not the best we can do. We are not reaching, we're not working hard to make sure that we are, through our actions and our proposals, showing the residents that have had so much hurt and damage and just bad health due to the existing industry that's already around us, in good faith, showing them that we are doing our best by proposing the cleanest fuel possible. It's just disappointing, and I think we can do better, and we should be working really hard to do better. So I'm asking again for cumulative impact assessment, 2,000 trees or more, and a buffer for I-75, and really just a plan, a proposal that just knocks sorry, that's my son, that knocks our socks off, that shows us the future, and that Michigan can do something really incredible and fantastic with its residents in mind. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your comment. So we have one other hand raised right now. I'm going to go ahead and unmute this person. Hold on a second. Okay. All right. So this was the last person that I had, and I apologize, I don't have a name. All right, let's see if we can make this work. All right, I see that one other person had their name up, and it says that you're using an older version of Zoom. So I did promote you to a panelist, and you should be able to unmute and talk, but I don't know the proper name for you. So I want to make sure that we are giving you guys the opportunity. Okay, so Jim, I don't know if you can help me with this one. It's not letting me unmute, and I did promote them to panelists, but it's still not allowing to unmute. So I apologize for that. I'm going to just move on to the next person, who is Lisa Rodriguez, and we'll see if we can get this other one figured out in a minute. So Lisa, if you would like to make a comment, you can go ahead and do that.
Good evening, and thank you, Jennifer and Marianne. I just have a few comments. If you can consider increasing mitigation to expand windows and air filtration from 300 to 1,000 feet, enhance a greater buffer along I-75, and to plant an additional 3,000 trees. I'd like to also see the plan to actually steward the buffer and its vegetation, and study what this new environment is doing to the trees, and at some point, some type of soil evaluation, maybe every 2 years to, and I'm talking about like a mile radius of the bridge of what these contaminants are doing to the soil. I thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. So I know there was one person who we are not able to unmute, and I apologize. It would involve logging off and updating your Zoom account and then logging back in. But I am going to talk about some other ways that you can submit a comment. Again, I greatly apologize that we're not able to make that happen for you verbally tonight. But that was our last comment that we have, our last hand that was raised. So I'm going to give you just a second here while I get the closing statement ready in case anybody else would like to make a comment before we do that. So just kind of double checking. All right. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close out the hearing, Marianne. So I'm just going to read a closing statement, and then we have a couple other things to go over after the closing statement. So if folks want to stay on to get contact information and some other information about resources, that would be great. So thank you so much for taking the time to participate in this meeting tonight. We appreciate your interest in protecting Michigan's air quality. As indicated at the beginning of the hearing, the public comment period will close at midnight on March 14th, 2022. All interested parties, anyone who provided comments during the public comment period, and anyone who attended this public hearing will be directly notified of the final decision on this proposed permit. The hearing is now closed, so thank you again. And like I mentioned earlier, I know it is important for folks to come and verbally do their comments, and we do appreciate when people take the time out of their night to do that, but maybe you weren't prepared to make a comment tonight, or maybe there's some other things that you want to comment on, even if you did already submit a comment tonight. So I do want to make sure that we go over these other ways that you can submit a comment to us before the end of the day on the 14th. So we'll definitely take any comments via mail. So especially if you have extra things that you want to send us, you can send those via mail. And like I said, I promised I would read some of these out loud for the folks that we do have on the phone. So if you want to mail those in, those would go to Annette Switzer, and she is our permit section manager. Her last name is Switzer, and it's S as in Sam, W-I-T as in Tom, Z as in zebra, E as in elephant, and then R. So Annette Switzer, permit section manager, Eagle, that's EGLE, Air Quality Division, and it's PO Box 30260, and that's Lansing, Michigan. And then the zip code is 48909. An easier way for you might be to just send it to us via email. Now, we do have a size limit on attachments to that. So if for some reason you want to make sure that we got it, just send us a note saying, hey, did you get my email message? If you have something that's larger than, I want to say it's 15 megabytes. I should have double checked that, but I'm pretty sure it's 15 megabytes. If you have something larger than that, then you might want to just get a hold of Janelle, and she can give you other ways to get us that information. So that email address is EGLE, E-G-L-E -AQD PTI public comments. So PTI public comments is all one word. And then it's at Michigan.gov. So it's EGLE -AQD P as in Paul, T as in Tom, I as in igloo, the word public, and then the word comments at Michigan, all spelled out, .gov as in government. And then one of the easiest ways to get us your comment is just to call our voicemail. So that phone number is 517-284-0900. And we do have several things open for comment right now. So the message might be a little bit long, but definitely leave us that message if you'd like to. I also want to point out that we have a website, and it's Michigan.gov/EGLEAirPublicNotice, and EGLEAirPublicNotice is all one word. And that's basically a page where you can find all of the different actions that we have open for comments. So anything that we're looking for public input on is going to be on that page from an air quality perspective. So you're going to find permits on there, enforcement actions, all kinds of stuff, but the permit stuff is at the top. And right now we're thankful that we can provide some of this information in multiple languages. So we do have some of our permit pieces of information in Bengali, Arabic, Spanish, and then English. And so you're going to find on there the proposed project summary. So those are going to be a very high level summary of the project. The technical fact sheet is going to dig a little deeper, like we did tonight, into the rules, the regulations, more of Janelle's review that she did, things like that. You're going to be able to see the proposed permit terms and conditions, and it's going to have some of those rules that Jeff talked about when he was talking about how we do our compliance inspections. So if you have questions about those, where to find those rules, definitely reach out to us. We'll also link the meeting recordings on those pages as well. It's going to take a couple of days to get this up on YouTube, but like I said, as soon as it is up there, I will share it with all of you. And I do want to just read out Janelle's email address and her phone number, because I know we have some folks on the phone, so you at least have one point of contact. If you're watching virtually, you can see all the other folks that you heard from tonight, but Janelle's information is trollhillj1@michigan.gov, so I'll spell that out for you. It's T as in Tom, R-O-W-H, I as in igloo, L-L, the letter J, and then the number 1. So it's trollhillj1 at Michigan.gov as in government. Apologize for my stumbling. And her phone number is 517-582-5312. So you can feel free to give her a call, even if you need to get a hold of Susan, if you're one of the folks that is on the phone, if you want to jot down Janelle's contact information, she can always get you to one of the rest of us to get you some information if you need that. So we're always happy to help. We'd love to answer more of your questions if you have them before the comment period. Spending time with your family or things like that. But we do appreciate you taking the time to learn about this potential project tonight and get some more information. So that being said, thank you so much. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your evening.